We're going to move on to the equally excellent Florence Vilmino, who's been looking through the international papers.
This is getting awkward.
This is getting very awkward. We're going to look at reaction, not to my awkward chat, but to the G20 meeting in China. It's really been quite an interesting one for the body language analysts and the diplomatic sort of protocol
That's
fans.
right. This might be awkward. If we take a look at the front page of the Wall Street Journal today, there's a great photo. Now, they say that, body language is half of diplomacy. Well, check out this frosty body language here between the U.S. President Barack Obama and the Russian President Vladimir Putin. I think you could describe that as staring contest there. I wonder who's going to win that one. Now, they met on the sidelines of the G20 summit, but they didn't manage to break an impasse over how to reduce violence in Syria, amongst other disagreements they have, of course.
All right, so Obama and Putin making headlines, getting their photos taken, but some much more unexpected people or animals, I ought to say, trying to get their little bit of the action. This is a funny little story from the sidelines.
That's right. I wish there was footage of this. Maybe there's some smartphone footage that'll come out. You can read about it in The Independent. It's an incident that happened on the sidelines of the G20 summit. You can get a gist of what happened in this title here. It happened when the world leaders were on a boat tour on a lake. Now, world leaders like the British Prime Minister Theresa May and German Chancellor Angela Merkel, they were mingling when all of a sudden a fish made a death leap from the deep straight into their boat and caused quite a diplomatic incident, it must be said. According to The Independent, prime ministers and presidents were trying to avoid getting their evening wear covered in lake water, except for one person, the Italian Prime Minister, Matteo Renzi, who jumped into action. Now, The Independent says that this might be normal because he has a nickname. It is Il Rottamatore, which means the scrapper. Now, he came to the rescue and apparently tried to usher this fish back into the lake with his foot, but ended up...
Kick it back in, basically.
Kick it back in. Was the diplomatic way of saying kicked it. But the problem is he actually took a little tumble himself. So maybe you'll see some sort of irony in the situation. It's a great read in any event.
Everyone losing the plot, basically, including the fish. Hope the fish was all right. Any news?
Very
Maybe
rebellious
come back to
fish.
us with that. Exactly. Well, Stephen was just telling us about François Hollande's diplomatic and economic efforts in Vietnam, overseeing deals being signed off. The US President Barack Obama, he's moved on from China. He was going to go to the Philippines, meet the president there, not happening so
Not
much
happening.
anymore.
Now, what's interesting is if you look at the Filipino press, they're still reporting that this meeting was supposed to take place. This is the front page of the Philippine Daily Inquirer. The president is to discuss the drug war with Obama. Now, the problem is that in the meantime, the Filipino president, Rodrigo Duterte, actually called Obama an obscenity. Now, you can read all the details here in the Washington Post. It's a little complicated because essentially the Filipino president was talking to journalists. He threatened to curse out Obama if ever he were to raise the issue of extrajudicial killings. Now, he said, for instance, do not throw a question. He's hypothetically talking to Obama here. Putang ina, I will swear at you in that form. Now, that is a Tagalog phrase for son of a... We won't say it on air, will we? But it's an insult that Obama shrugged off, actually. He said it was just a colourful comment, but that meeting has been canceled. Now, Duterte has since expressed regret that his comments came across as a personal attack.
All right, let's stay in Asia. It's a very Asian newspaper review today. Papers reacting to the results of the elections in Hong Kong. Very strong showing there for some of the figures we saw coming out of the Umbrella Revolution.
That's right, getting a lot of attention outside of Hong Kong. First of all, check out this article in The Guardian where it talks about how these pro-democracy activists grabbed a foothold on power. Several of the radical young activists who were leading that Umbrella Revolution won seats in the 70-member Legislative Council. Now, among them, this young man, Nathan Law, 23 years old, seen as one of the real leaders of the Umbrella Revolution. You can read about it in the editorial in the Wall Street Journal today that says this is an unmistakable message to Beijing. The election shows that the spirit of the Umbrella Revolution is not dead. And of course, it's a huge story on Hong Kong as well. I pulled out the editorial here of the South China Morning Post. You can see this election marks a new era in Hong Kong political life. This record turnout and the rise of young activists shows the strength of democratic aspirations and a desire for change, and they hope that this will be good for the future of Hong Kong.
All right, one final story. It's from the New York Times, but they're talking about things that are happening in the United Kingdom. It's to do with loneliness.
That's right. This is a really interesting article I recommend in the New York Times. It's talking about a loneliness epidemic that researchers are finding in the UK, but also elsewhere as well, particularly amongst old people. Now, scientists are finding that loneliness can cause some serious health issues. For instance, it can be worse for longevity than obesity and air pollution. So it's being treated as a major public health issue in the UK. Now, interesting article in the Washington Post today about loneliness as well that points out that though it might be depressing and painful and, bad for your health, it might have actually helped us survive. Scientists have been researching why we feel lonely. A lot of them believe that it's kind of like hunger, and it helps us seek out others and in the end survive. So if you're lonely, it's not you, it's your genes.
All right, very interesting indeed. Thanks very much, Flo Villamino, looking through the international papers for us.